Survive a Vampire's End Times Sanctuary. Chapter 1, The Collector. Zombies everywhere. The apocalypse had arrived. While everyone else was frantically hoarding supplies, I was hoarding people. Because I'm not human, I'm a vampire. For me, the real danger wasn't the zombies. It was managing the 4 extremely clever men I'd collected as my personal food supply. I'd finally gotten to experience what it felt like to have a harem, and it nearly destroyed me. I'm a 200-year-old vampire who looks 20, single, and admittedly a bit of a player. I have eclectic tastes, but my favorite meals are brilliant, attractive men. That's why I spend most of my free time lurking around universities and research institutes, working my vampire charm on unsuspecting intellectuals. If I'm lucky, I get both a good meal and good company. Lately, though, every gorgeous guy I'd set my sights on had been playing hard to get. I refused to force anyone, so I'd been reduced to drinking animal blood just to survive. I was absolutely starving for human blood. Just moments ago, my latest beautiful prey had brushed me off with an excuse about studying for exams. So here I was, sitting in my car, simultaneously hungry and annoyed, scrolling through dating strategy articles on my phone. Living and learning, even after 2 centuries. If you don't keep up with the times as a vampire, you go hungry. Suddenly, my vampire family group chat pinged with a new message. My second cousin in Europe said zombies had appeared in Western Europe, and the virus was spreading aggressively. He estimated it would reach pandemic levels worldwide within 2 weeks. Zombies don't attack vampires. In fact, vampires can bite zombies. But zombie blood is absolutely disgusting and causes violent digestive reactions, like toxic cough syrup. So my cousin was urging us all to stockpile blood, better yet, stockpile people or risk starvation. Vampires are incredibly sensitive to changes in human blood. My cousin's intel was never wrong. Reading his message, I felt something stir inside me. My lips curved into a smile. This was fate handing me an opportunity. I could finally collect a group of gorgeous men. The thought was so moving I nearly drooled. I steadied myself and carefully considered both my 200 years of accumulated wealth and the types of men I needed to collect. My real estate portfolio was scattered across different cities. In this particular city, I only owned a suburban villa and 5 units in a downtown high-rise building. Vampires are naturally sensitive to sunlight. We don't turn to ash like in the legends, but we do get dizzy, weak, and generally miserable. To keep my secret, I had to live alone. The villa was too far from downtown inconvenient for regular commutes, so I decided to leave it vacant for now. To maintain control over these men through supply monopoly, I needed to prevent them from meeting each other. Otherwise, they might team up and become self-sufficient. That meant I could only collect 4 men, 1 for each of the remaining apartments. My liquid assets amounted to several $1,000,000, enough to cover their initial expenses. Later, once the zombies took over, I could just raid supermarkets with impunity since they couldn't bite me. As for the types of men, while I preferred brilliant academics, I couldn't put all my eggs in one basket. If things deteriorated and the 5 of us were forced to live together, having 4 different skill sets, plus my zombie immunity would create a well-balanced survival team. After careful consideration, I decided I needed an athletic type, a domestic type, a brilliant medical professional, and an innocent puppy dog type. Plan set. I opened an apocalyptic survival novel I'd saved and started shopping like crazy based on its recommendations. Over the next several hours, I ordered everything: food, bottled water, clothing, household goods, medicine, self-defense equipment, and entertainment systems. I had all 5 apartments fitted with solar panels and bulletproof glass. I even bought soil and seeds. Most importantly, I bought 4 treadmills and 4 sets of dumbbells. Because my food supply needed to maintain their healthy, attractive physiques at all times. But how would I actually lure 4 men into this arrangement? Vampire strength is only slightly above human levels, and my venom only creates temporary confusion and lightheadedness, not total control. Kidnapping 4 adult men in their prime wasn't realistic. After much deliberation, I decided to scout 8 potential candidates, 2 of each type. The day before the outbreak, I'd message my first choice candidates, warning them about the zombie apocalypse and offering them shelter. If they didn't respond by outbreak day, I'd contact my backup choices. Over the next 2 weeks, I pulled out all the stops. I staked out universities, hospitals, and gyms, finally identifying 8 potential candidates and successfully getting their contact information. I stored most of my supplies in my own apartment, dividing the rest equally among the 4 apartments where my future harem would live. With everything prepared, I poured myself a glass of fresh blood from the black market, then contentedly watched my 4 golden cages through the pinhole cameras I'd installed, waiting for my beautiful young men to arrive. August 25, one day before outbreak. Although governments worldwide were trying to suppress news of the zombie virus to prevent panic, related videos and reports kept appearing online. Most people still thought it was just a rumor, some elaborate internet hoax. 10 hours remained until the vampire community's predicted outbreak in my city. I picked up my phone and sent carefully crafted messages to all 4 first-choice candidates. I'd spent the last 2 weeks building rapport with each one, establishing myself as charming, slightly mysterious, but trustworthy. Turns out one of my medical professionals had already blocked me. I felt momentarily disappointed, but quickly rallied. No big deal, I still had a backup. This particular guy just wasn't meant to be. As a vampire, I don't save the unwilling. But when I messaged my second medical choice, he'd blocked me too. I sighed, genuinely puzzled. Do handsome doctors really dislike glamorous, seductive women like me? But I moved on quickly. Not a huge problem. Tomorrow the hospitals would be full of lost souls. I could just pick one up then. Soon the other 3 candidates responded. The athletic type said even if zombies existed, he wasn't afraid. He'd fight to his last breath. The domestic type said he'd also seen the online rumors and was willing to bring his supplies to my place. The puppy dog type said I was being paranoid and believing internet nonsense, but he'd be happy to come keep me company and help calm my anxiety. Well, looked like the puppy would be my first meal. Chapter 2, The Collection. 3 hours later, the domestic type arrived first. His name was Ashton Hayes, 23 years old, agricultural science grad student skilled at housework and gardening. I'd first spotted him at a farmer's market 2 weeks ago, haggling cheerfully with vendors over heirloom tomatoes. His slightly tanned skin glowed with health, his smile was pure sunshine, and his eyes sparkled with genuine enthusiasm when he talked about sustainable farming. I'd accidentally knocked over his basket of vegetables, then insisted on buying him coffee to apologize. We'd talked for 2 hours about soil composition and heritage seeds. He was passionate, earnest, and completely unaware of how attractive his enthusiasm made him. Now he stood before me with uncharacteristic seriousness, a duffel bag slung over his shoulder, sharing what he knew about the zombie situation and expressing his pessimistic outlook on the apocalypse. I've been following agricultural forums, he said, running a hand through his sandy hair. Farmers in Europe started reporting unusual animal behavior weeks ago, dead livestock reanimating. It's spreading through the food chain. I put on my best worried, heartbroken expression, eyes brimming with tears as I told him I completely agreed with his assessment. I delivered my prepared story. I'd just moved to this city for work, didn't know anyone, had no family or friends nearby. My parents were overseas, unreachable. The zombie outbreak was so sudden. He was the first person I thought of. I hoped we could support each other through this crisis. I also mentioned that my father had bought me 2 apartments in this building as an investment. We could each have one. After this speech, I gazed at him with pitiful eyes. My vampire's naturally pale complexion made me look even more fragile. Maybe my haggard appearance contrasted too sharply with the radiant beauty he'd first met, or maybe the genuine fear in the air made him protective. Ashton's expression softened completely. "Hey, don't worry," he said gently, setting down his bag to squeeze my hand. "We'll figure this out together. I grew up on a farm. I know how to make things grow, how to preserve food, how to survive. You won't be alone." His warmth was so genuine it almost made me feel guilty. Almost. I settled him into the 16th floor apartment. Once the door closed behind me, I turned away with a satisfied smirk. One down. Next came the puppy dog type. Camden Pierce. 20 years old, college student majoring in communications. In an apocalypse, he had no particularly useful survival skills. Based on my 200 years of experience, he was also a certified player. But his face was absolutely perfect to me, harmless, sweet, and gorgeous, with that boy-next-door charm that made people want to trust him instantly. I'd met him at a campus coffee shop, where he was simultaneously flirting with the barista and texting someone else. When he'd noticed me watching with amusement, he'd had the audacity to wink. He was skilled at using puppy dog eyes to play pitiful and exceptional at sweet talking. In our subsequent chance meetings, he'd been laying on the charm thick, clearly thinking he was the predator in this scenario, which made the whole situation deliciously ironic. As soon as he saw me now, he brushed back my bangs with practiced concern. "Hey there, sweetheart, don't be scared, I'm here now." His overnight bag looked expensive, probably borrowed from whatever girl he'd most recently charmed. Just as he gazed at me with those ambiguous puppy eyes, his phone started buzzing frantically. News alerts about zombies spreading through the city popped up one after another. I watched the blood drain from his face as he scrolled, his player persona cracking. His hands started shaking. "Sweetheart, don't be scared," he said, voice higher than usual. "I've got everything ready." I wiped the cold sweat from his forehead, finding his terror oddly endearing, and led him to the 15th floor. I repeated the same story I'd told Ashton. When he saw the fully stocked apartment, the food, the water, the entertainment system, the comfortable bed, his puppy eyes lit up again. He looked at me like he'd won the lottery. "Babe, I don't know what to say. Just know that whenever you need me, I'm here." His voice had that breathy quality that probably worked on most girls. I acted deeply touched, told him to rest well, then excused myself, saying I was exhausted and needed sleep. As I left, the strap of my nightgown slipped off my right shoulder. I didn't need to look back to sense Camden's heated gaze. Thinking about finally getting a proper meal tomorrow night, I licked my lips with anticipation. 2 down. Back home, I received a message from my athletic type, Sterling West. He was a police academy student, 21 years old, with the kind of disciplined intensity that came from rigorous training. I'd first seen him at a shooting range, correcting a younger student's stance with patient authority. Later, I'd accidentally needed help with my gym membership card. He'd been polite but distant, the type who didn't mix personal with professional. That distance had made him more intriguing. Over 2 weeks of carefully timed encounters, I'd learned he took duty seriously, had a protective streak a mile wide, and beneath that stern exterior was someone who genuinely wanted to help people. Now he messaged, "Asterisk, stay safe and lock your doors. Don't worry too much. My unit is being deployed on a mission. We'll resolve this crisis quickly. I'll check on you as soon as I can. Asterisk." How naive. Must be the youth talking. But this meant I didn't need to contact my backup. Once his mission failed, my uniformed protector would come looking for me. I checked the time, almost 3 a.m. Tomorrow my city would be overrun with zombies. My harem would soon be complete. 3 down, 1 to go. August 26, Outbreak Day. At 8 in the morning, social media nearly crashed. By 2 in the afternoon, posts had decreased significantly. Everyone was too busy fleeing or hiding to post online. I dressed carefully in front of the mirror, practical clothes that could pass for apocalypse gear, but were fitted enough to show my figure. Then I leisurely took the elevator down to the parking garage. When the elevator doors opened, I found 2 zombies inside, reeking of decay, mindlessly banging against the walls. I barely kept from gagging as I stepped in and pressed the button for the first floor. The zombies paid me no attention whatsoever. I recognized one zombie as a resident from the 10th floor, Mrs. Chen, who used to complain about the building's recycling program. A wave of unexpected sadness hit me, but I quickly composed myself and found her keys in her purse. Achievement unlocked, expanded living space. The zombies and I rode to the first floor together. I kicked them out into the lobby and continued to the garage. Note to self, bring a knife next time. Even though I can't be bitten, I shouldn't let zombies attack potential future meals. I drove to City General Hospital. The scene before me was absolute hell on earth. Police cars sat outside with sirens blaring but no officers inside. Zombies in regular clothes, hospital gowns, police uniforms, and white coats attacked people everywhere. Very few normal humans remained, and those who did were running and screaming. My heart sank. Finding my medical professional in this chaos would be nearly impossible. Worried, I quickly navigated through the chaos and entered the hospital. Inside was the same nightmare. The entire building reeked of rotting zombie blood, making me dizzy and nauseous. I closed my eyes to steady myself. When I opened them, I saw medical candidate number 2 walk past, except now he was a zombie, his white coat splattered with blood. I gritted my teeth, grabbed a nearby surgical knife, and stabbed him through the eye socket. His body fell forward with a crash. I couldn't bear to look back. I ran deeper into the hospital. Given the current situation, any surviving humans would be hiding. Hospital infrastructure was generally solid. Anyone in hiding should be temporarily safe. So I headed straight for the blood bank, planning to stockpile fresh blood while I searched. To my surprise, I ran into a fellow vampire there, Dorian Vale. We were the only 2 vampires currently living in this city. Vampires are naturally solitary creatures and didn't socialize much, but we knew each other. Dorian was older than me, maybe 400 years, with the kind of refined elegance that came from centuries of practice. Dark hair, sharp features, and an unsettling habit of seeing straight through people's pretenses. We'd had a brief, ill-advised encounter about 50 years ago. We didn't talk about it. We exchanged knowing smiles now. He graciously offered me a spare cart. As I finished loading blood bags and was about to leave, Dorian stopped me. Your first-choice medical professional is hiding in the doctor's lounge on the 4th floor. I was thrilled but also confused. Thrilled he was still alive, confused about how Dorian knew which guy I'd been pursuing. Was he afraid I'd compete for his food supply? Did he want to eliminate me? Dorian seemed to read my concern. He smiled helplessly and explained, I happened to see you shamelessly asking for his contact information 2 weeks ago. You weren't exactly subtle. I relaxed slightly, though heat crept up my neck. Thank you. I started to leave, but Dorian grabbed my arm. His grip was cool and firm. If prey runs short, find me. His dark eyes held something I couldn't quite read, an offer, a warning, or perhaps a hope. I felt awkward and fled with my blood cart, thinking about that night 50 years ago, my toes practically curling with embarrassment. After hiding the blood in my car trunk, I rushed to the 4th floor. Sure enough, a group of zombies was attacking a door. The lounge sign had fallen off and lay trampled underfoot. I took out my knife and eliminated them one by one, then pounded on the door. Kieran Ashford, is anyone in there? Silence. Then, who are you? A male voice, controlled but strained. It's me. We met at the hospital fundraiser 2 weeks ago. Please, I need help. The door cracked open. Kieran's usually composed face was streaked with blood and sweat, his jaw tight. He pulled me inside and slammed the door shut. Kieran Ashford, 28 years old, trauma surgeon with a reputation for brilliant diagnostics and a complete lack of bedside manner. I'd first encountered him in the hospital cafeteria, where he'd been arguing with another doctor about treatment protocols. He'd been right, obviously, but had delivered his points with such cold precision that the other doctor had left near tears. Later, I'd engineered an introduction at a fundraiser. He'd been polite but uninterested, seeing straight through my flirtation. When I'd asked for his number in case of medical emergencies, he'd given me his office line and walked away. He'd blocked my personal messages within 3 days, which had only made him more appealing. Now he grabbed my shoulders, eyes scanning me rapidly for injuries. Are you bitten? Scratched? Any exposure to bodily fluids? No, I'm fine. How did you get here? Why did you come? The streets are completely overrun. His hands moved efficiently, checking my pulse, examining my eyes. I stared at him, my brain working frantically to fabricate answers. I saw you'd blocked me, so I came to find you. Then the zombies broke out while I was on my way. His eyes narrowed. You came to find me, the doctor who blocked you, during a zombie apocalypse. I brought a knife, sprayed myself with tons of perfume, and I know self-defense. I gestured to my blood-stained clothes. Whenever a zombie came near, I just killed it. Perfume. His tone was flat with disbelief. Luckily, the zombies don't seem very interested in me. The entire city has fallen. It's all zombies out there. I saw them surrounding a door and figured someone must be inside. I called your name and it actually was you. I grew more animated as I spoke, finally throwing myself into Kieran's arms and smearing zombie blood, tears, and snot all over his white coat. He didn't push me away in disgust. Instead, he looked down at me with a complicated expression, suspicion, confusion, and something that might have been reluctant concern. Are we really that close? His voice was quiet. You might not like me, but you're all I have. I pulled back enough to meet his eyes, letting real desperation show through. My parents are overseas. I don't know anyone else in this city. When everything started, you were the only person I could think of who might be smart enough to survive. He studied my face for a long moment. I could practically see him running calculations, weighing probabilities. What do we do now? He finally asked. Is your luck buff still active? I straightened up confidently. Follow me with the knife. As long as we're quick enough, we can get out. During our conversation, more zombies had gathered outside, drawn by our voices. I pulled out my perfume and drenched Kieran from head to toe until he was nearly choking from the scent. I made him stand back, then opened the door and dramatically dispatched 4 zombies with quick, precise knife strikes. I didn't have time to enjoy Kieran's shocked, analytically assessing gaze. I grabbed his hand and ran for the elevator. We encountered a few more zombies along the way, but made it to the parking garage relatively smoothly. Once in the car, I channeled my inner action hero, using skilled driving to dodge zombies, flooring the accelerator all the way home. I glanced at Kieran's usually cool, detached face, now showing traces of motion sickness and dawning realization that he'd just escaped death. Very satisfying. Apparently, conquering brilliant men required a different approach. You had to make them see you as competent, maybe even impressive. though I quickly realized his green tinge was actually car sickness. Once he'd recovered slightly, I took him up to the 18th floor, showed him the fully stocked apartment, and told him to rest well. Then I coolly turned to head home. But internally, I was calculating, wondering where I stood with him and when I'd get to feed on him without raising suspicion. 3 down, 1 to go. As soon as I got home, I rushed to shower. My nose had gone numb from the zombie stench. Exhausted, I collapsed on my bed, wondering when the last guy, Sterling, would arrive. Just then, someone knocked on my door. I saw Sterling's face on the security monitor and felt a genuine flutter of excitement, though I instantly switched to worry and relieved surprise as I opened the door. "Are you okay? What's it like out there? I've been so worried." Sterling looked like he'd been through hell. His police academy uniform was torn and bloodstained, his face grim with exhaustion and something deeper disillusionment, maybe. "I'm sorry," he said, voice rough. "We failed. The Force. Most of them didn't make it. The zombies moved faster than anyone predicted. Stronger, too." His chiseled face showed determination mixed with guilt and self-reproach. His hands clenched and unclenched at his sides. "I didn't prepare supplies. I was too arrogant. Thought training would be enough. Now I'm just adding to your burden." "It's not a burden at all." I reached out to touch his arm, feeling the tension in his muscles. "You serve the people you were doing your duty. I'm just grateful you're alive." Something in his expression softened. "You really mean that?" "Of course I do." I pulled him to the 19th floor, delivering my rehearsed backstory again. By now, I could recite it naturally without any suspicious tells, even to a police academy student trained to detect deception. Sterling listened carefully, his cop instincts clearly evaluating my story. But exhaustion and trauma had dulled his usual sharpness, and my story was carefully constructed to be just believable enough. When he saw the apartment, saw that I'd genuinely prepared for this, something in his rigid posture finally relaxed. "Thank you," he said simply. "I won't forget this." And with that, my harem was complete. I returned to my 17th floor apartment and watched all 4 men through the security cameras. They sat or lay in various poses. Ashton was organizing his supplies with methodical efficiency. Camden was on his phone, probably trying to reach someone. Sterling sat like a statue, processing trauma. Kieran stood at his window, observing the chaos below with clinical detachment. 4 beautiful, intelligent men, 4 perfect meals. I changed into a sexy black nightgown and applied subtle makeup, then took the stairs to the 15th floor and knocked on Camden's door. Time to eat. Chapter 3. The Feeding. "Can you keep me company?" Camden happily let me in. His apartment smelled like expensive cologne and fierce sweat. He'd been pacing, I could tell. "I've been going crazy," he admitted, running a hand through his perfect hair. "Trying to call my family, my friends. Nobody's answering. I keep thinking." He trailed off. "Hey," I stepped close, putting a hand on his chest. "You're not alone. I'm here." As soon as the door closed, I eagerly wrapped my arms around his neck and kissed him. He responded immediately. This was his comfort zone. Physical connection instead of existential dread. I gently bit into Camden's neck and slowly injected my venom. Just a small amount, enough to make him dizzy and relaxed, his memories of the next few minutes hazy. The venom would make him temporarily confused, and he'd quickly fall into deep sleep afterward. I bent over him and drank deeply, savoring the taste of young, healthy blood after weeks of deprivation. Young, fresh blood drove me wild with excitement. I accidentally drank too much. When I finally pulled away, Camden's face had gone pale, his breathing shallow. Guilt flickered through me, but hunger had its own logic. I laid him gently on the bed, pulled the covers over him, and left. The next morning, when Camden woke up to see me looking radiant and completely satisfied, he seemed somewhat traumatized. He must have been deeply confused about why he felt completely drained while I looked incredibly energized. Camden asked hopefully, "Babe, you must be exhausted from yesterday, right?" "Yeah, you were amazing." I traced his lips with my finger, genuinely pleased with how well the first feeding had gone. I felt a bit regretful, though. I'd need to let him recover for a few days before the second feeding. Players might look good, but they weren't in the best physical condition. But my sympathy was premature. The next second, Camden wrapped his arms around my waist, batting those innocent puppy eyes while saying the most manipulative thing. "Babe, I have a sister. She's hiding alone at home right now with not enough supplies. It's really dangerous." I nearly laughed. "So we were playing this game already." "She doesn't live far. Could she come stay here? She won't bother you, I promise." Ha! I'd already checked he had no sister living in this city. DMV records, social media, university enrollment, I'd done my homework. He was probably thinking the same thing I was wanting to collect a whole set during the apocalypse. Bring in a girlfriend, maybe convince me to take in a friend or two. I had no interest in women's blood, and I wasn't about to be a sucker raising someone else's girlfriend. So I blinked innocently too, biting my lip carefully. Of course your sister can come, I'm worried about her too. His face lit up. But I only have enough supplies for 3 people for about a week. Maybe when you go pick her up, you could stop by a store for more? I'm too scared to go alone, but if you're going anyway. I watched his expression shift. In his weakened state, even zombies wouldn't want Camden. He'd never dare go to a store. Sure enough, as I predicted, he batted his puppy eyes and flashed his perfect smile. I thought about it, she can probably last another week where she is. The zombies just broke out. We're probably safer staying put right now and letting things settle. That's so wise, I said admiringly. You're absolutely right. I swayed away satisfied and went home to binge-watch TV. The other 3 were too polite and not as easy to seduce as Camden, so I decided to take my time building rapport. No need to rush. 1 down, 3 to go. Over the next week, I spent every day messaging all 4 men, building emotional connections. With Ashton, I asked questions about growing food on my balcony, let him teach me basic gardening. His enthusiasm was infectious, and I found myself genuinely enjoying his company, even when I wasn't hungry. With Camden, I kept things light and flirtatious, occasionally visiting to watch movies. He seemed content with the attention and didn't mention his sister again. With Sterling, I discussed security measures and survival strategies. He was in protective mode, constantly thinking about worst-case scenarios and how to keep everyone safe. With Kieran, I was more cautious. He spent most of his time taking notes, observing zombie behavior from his window, clearly trying to understand the outbreak from a medical perspective. One day, I was at Ashton's on the 16th floor, learning to cook with his hands guiding mine through making pasta from scratch. I turned my head to ask a question and accidentally kissed his cheek. I didn't pull away immediately. Instead, I let the moment stretch, feeling his breath catch, before turning back and placing the finished pasta on the table with slightly trembling hands. To my surprise, as soon as the plate hit the table, Ashton grabbed my waist and spun me around. "I've been wanting to do this all week," he murmured. We quickly moved from the living room to the bedroom. Since we hadn't eaten yet, I was afraid drinking his blood now would raise suspicions when he woke up hungry and confused. So I decided to let him eat first, then I'd feast. While he was eating, I received a message from Sterling. Asterisk, we're running low on supplies. I've been monitoring several nearby stores. I think I can safely retrieve more food. Would you come with me? I don't want to leave you here alone if something goes wrong. I was so moved I nearly cried real tears. A whole week had passed, and the other 3 hadn't mentioned supplies once, even though everything was down to about 2 or 3 days' worth. Sterling was thinking ahead, being responsible, protecting everyone. I couldn't pass up this golden opportunity to both build goodwill and feed, so I volunteered to go with him. We set the time for tomorrow evening. Thinking I'd soon get to feed on number 3 made my heart soar. After dinner, I didn't hesitate. During an intimate moment, I injected venom and started drinking, careful to take less than I had from Camden. Ashton's blood tasted like sunshine and earth, wholesome and nourishing. Mindful of my date with Sterling tomorrow, I left Ashton a sweet note while he slept, then went home satisfied. 2 down, 2 to go. Chapter 4, The Mission. The next morning, I went to Sterling's place on the 19th floor for a simple action briefing and tactical planning. He'd set up a map of the area on his dining table, marking locations, zombie concentrations, and potential escape routes. His various precautions seemed mostly pointless to me. I couldn't explain that zombies literally wouldn't attack me, but he looked so serious and competent. I stared at him unblinking, admiring the focused intensity on his face. Gradually, his gaze started shifting away, and his speech began to stutter. "So we'll approach from the east entrance because are you listening?" "Completely. You're brilliant at this." His ears turned red. Interesting. That evening, we geared up and drove out. We hit several supermarkets, but they'd all been cleaned out. We had to drive much farther away. Finally, at a large supermarket in the outskirts, we found shelves still reasonably stocked. But the moment I entered, I smelled humans, living humans, more than one. My entire body went on alert. It had only been a week since the zombie outbreak. Plenty of survivors remained. But what kind of survivors would hole up in a supermarket, this well-stocked, without taking everything? Best case scenario, regular people also looking for supplies, being cautious. Worst case, predators using this as a trap, waiting to ambush others. Even if it was the worst case, I couldn't suggest leaving now. I couldn't exactly explain that I'd smelled humans, could I? Fortunately, Sterling was a trained fighter and I was a vampire. As long as there weren't too many of them and they didn't have guns, we had a fighting chance. I deliberately guided Sterling toward areas with weaker human sense, grabbing supplies quickly. "There might be people inside," I whispered. "We should be careful." "Yeah, there might be survivors. We should help them if we can." His voice was earnest. I was speechless. This guy was way too naive, too idealistic. Harboring rescue fantasies, Sterling completely ignored my warning and wandered around the supermarket, looking for signs of survivors. I couldn't keep stopping him without raising suspicion, so I just focused on grabbing supplies quickly while staying close. Suddenly, I realized something was wrong. The human scents that had been concentrated in one area were now distributed evenly throughout the store, like they'd spread out deliberately. Oh no, we were surrounded. These people were definitely not friendly. Before I could think of a plan, I heard a deep male voice. "Put down your stuff and put your hands up." I looked toward the voice and saw a huge, dark-skinned man holding a gun. 5 others emerged from behind shelves, rough-looking men and one woman with dead eyes. "It's real. Be careful." Just as I was silently praying it was fake, Sterling coldly confirmed it was a real gun. Fine. If the police academy student said it was real, who was I to argue? Then the man fired into the ceiling. Plaster rained down. I resignedly set down my supplies and raised my hands, genuinely terrified despite my vampire nature. Was this predator really about to get killed by her prey? 2 men came over and brought Sterling and me to their leader. I counted 6 people total, 5 men and 1 woman. 3 men had guns, 2 had clubs. The woman watched me with deep suspicion and something like warning in her eyes. From the moment I stood before him, the leader's eyes never left me. Clearly, he wanted more than just our supplies. This actually worked in my favor. Perverts tend to talk too much, and talkers make mistakes. Soon, our useful items had been confiscated, and we'd both been thoroughly searched, hands bound behind our backs. "Kill the man. We're having meat tonight." The leader gestured casually at Sterling. "Keep the woman. We're having meat tonight, too." He leered at me. His pudgy face made me want to vomit. His level of depravity exceeded even mine, which was saying something for a vampire. I stretched to make myself look smaller, more vulnerable, and sidled up to the leader with my most helpless expression. "Please, sir, that's my brother. Let him go and I'll do anything. I'll cooperate. I won't fight. Just don't hurt him." Smack. The leader slapped me so hard I saw stars and stumbled backward into the wall, tasting blood in my mouth. My own blood, not someone else's. The insult of it. "Don't play games with me. I don't care if he's your father. Son of a, I'd lived 200 years and never been this humiliated. Just wait, you'll get yours. Don't touch her." Sterling's voice was cold as ice, carrying absolute authority. "I'm a police academy student. I know where the weapons cache is. You need that, right?" I felt both moved and impressed. A true future officer negotiating with enemies and buying time, absolute perfection. The leader released me. "You think I'm stupid? You two don't have a single gun between you, but you know where they are?" "We didn't expect to find scum like you so soon after the outbreak. We weren't planning a raid today." Sterling's voice dripped with contempt. "Fine, tell me where. My partner and I will take you. Otherwise, I'm not saying. You could just shoot us after we tell you." The leader fell silent, apparently calculating how to get the guns without releasing us. But he didn't need to keep thinking. Because night had fully fallen, and through the store's high windows, I could see the moon had risen. Tonight was a full moon. My physical abilities were much stronger than usual, equivalent to a professional MMA fighter. Maybe better. While these guys looked tough, one-on-one they couldn't beat the well-trained Sterling. As long as we eliminated the 3 with guns first, the remaining 3 would be easy. While they were scheming, I made my move. I lunged at the leader with vampire speed, bit into his neck not to feed, but to inject a massive dose of venom, and forcibly twisted his gun 180 degrees, breaking his wrist. He screamed in pain, dropping the gun. I caught it. The gunman beside him rushed at me. On pure instinct, I kicked him square in the groin with all my supernatural strength. He collapsed like a puppet with cut strings. In those few seconds, Sterling had already reacted. Despite his bound hands, he disarmed another gunman with a brutal headbutt and swift kick. I heard the woman screaming and things clattering everywhere as she fled. I shoved the paralyzed leader away, blood covering my mouth. Sterling coolly fired 3 shots, 1, 2, 3, each one precisely hitting a target's forehead. The last man had fled, the woman was gone. Sterling and I locked eyes. His face showed shock, confusion, but also grim acceptance. We'd survived. "Your mouth," he said quietly. I wiped my face hastily. I bit him. It was the only weapon I had. He studied me for a long moment. You moved so fast. Adrenaline, I said firmly. We should go now. I cleaned my face, loaded our supplies, and we drove home in tense silence. Once home, I showered first, then paced my apartment, considering what to tell Sterling, how to explain without revealing too much. But before I could decide, I saw on my security feed that Sterling had left his apartment. No, I couldn't let him into my place. The other men might be here, might see him. I sprinted out and intercepted him in the 18th floor stairwell. He looked startled. What are you doing here? I was coming to see you. I couldn't sleep. I keep seeing. I let my voice break. Me too. He stepped closer, studying my face. What happened back there? How you moved? That wasn't normal. I don't know. I just reacted. I thought we were going to die. You saved my life. His hand came up to cup my face. Whatever you are, whatever that was, you saved my life. My breath caught. I'm just a woman who got lucky. No, his thumb brushed my cheekbone. You're extraordinary. That night, I had another full meal, though I was more careful with the dosage. Sterling was observant enough already. I didn't need him waking up suspicious. Back home, I stared at Kieran's profile picture, deep in thought. Only Kieran left. When would I finally get to feed on him? 3 down, 1 to go. Chapter 5, The Investigation. 2 days later, I noticed Kieran had gotten thinner, his face pale as a vampire's, with heavy dark circles under his eyes. I didn't understand, was he pulling all-nighters doing research? I decided to monitor him more closely and find his weak point so I could finally make my move. The next day, I watched him on camera almost constantly. He actually was doing research. He spent nearly the entire day writing notes, using the gaming laptop I'd provided to look things up, cross-referencing medical journals. He barely ate. No wonder he was getting so thin. He was starting to look unappetizing. I sighed quietly. At 7 p.m., he actually left his apartment carrying a black plastic bag. I followed at a distance, staying hidden. From afar, I could smell his mix of shampoo, body wash, insect repellent, cologne, and alcohol. After reaching the parking garage, he hid in a corner and threw the bag's contents into the distance. It was the fresh beef I'd given him 2 days ago. This wasteful ingrate. I watched the beef longingly, drooling. That beef still had blood in it. Soon, several zombies came over and started tearing at the meat with disturbing efficiency. Kieran stood motionless, staring intently at the zombies, occasionally taking photos with his phone, making notes. So he was basically at the zoo, feeding animals and documenting their behavior. When the zombies finished eating, Kieran began quietly weaving between parked cars toward the stairwell entrance. But one zombie seemed to sense something. It stiffly turned toward where Kieran had gone, then suddenly started sprinting with unnatural speed. Kieran ran too. As the gap narrowed, my muscles tensed, ready to intervene. Kieran finally made it through the door, slamming it shut. The zombie crashed into it, then released a low, crazed howl that echoed through the garage. I caught the elevator just before it closed and stepped in under Kieran's shocked gaze. You saw everything? His chest still heaved rapidly, sweat soaking through his shirt. Yeah, Dr. Ashford, did your zombie observations yield any results? Some, but I was too far away. I couldn't see certain details clearly: pupil dilation, skin discoloration patterns, muscle deterioration. Unfortunately, I can't get close enough or obtain blood samples. He paused. Tissue samples would be invaluable. So he did fear death. Watching him observe zombies unarmed, I'd almost thought he had a death wish. Why don't I drive you somewhere to observe? That'd be more efficient. I could help you get samples. Are you insane? That's dangerous. You could get bitten. His voice was sharp with genuine concern. You were in danger today too. They're getting faster and smarter, aren't they? If we're all going to die eventually, we might as well do something meaningful. I raised an eyebrow challengingly. He looked stunned. But even if you do nothing, you'd definitely make it until rescue arrives. You have supplies, you have security, you'd be fine. The people in the research labs must have already discovered something, he continued, voice both helpless and determined. They don't need my amateur observations. Even so, isn't an apocalypse adventure exciting? I looked at him playfully. Don't forget how I got you out of that zombie-filled hospital. I'm pretty good at not dying. He still disagreed, citing statistics and probabilities and risk-benefit ratios. I spent all evening wearing him down with logic and appeal to his scientific curiosity until Kieran finally gave in. Our plan was simple: hide in the car while observing zombies and run if they showed signs of attacking. My driving skills were excellent. Escape might not be foolproof, but I had it 90% handled. The next afternoon at 4:30 we set out. Few living people remained on the streets now, so zombies were scarce too, wandering aimlessly. We drove to the hospital blood bank. I retrieved some blood bags as bait while Kieran grabbed medical equipment and supplies. We quickly soaked bed sheets in blood and tied them to a first-floor window, then hid in the car. As I closed the door, a zombie brushed past me so close I could smell the decay. I glanced over and saw Kieran's pale face. "We should go back." He spoke rapidly. "This is too dangerous. I shouldn't have agreed. If something happens to you because of my research..." "Hey." I put my hand over his. "I want to do this. Maybe we'll discover something that helps, maybe not, but we're trying, and that matters." He studied my face like he was seeing me for the first time, then nodded slowly. Over the next 2 weeks, I accompanied Kieran almost every afternoon to observe zombies. No major crises, but constant minor ones, zombies appearing unexpectedly, getting too close, forcing us to flee. Okay, I'll admit some of those minor crises were accidentally caused by me getting distracted by Kieran's focused intensity. Thanks to the shared danger, Kieran's and my relationship heated up rapidly. We'd reached the casual touching stage, the sharing observations over dinner stage, the looking at each other too long stage. I was very pleased. Apparently connecting with brilliant men required intellectual engagement, shared purpose, manufactured danger. That evening, Kieran and I returned from observing. Both energized by a successful day, he'd managed to obtain tissue samples from a zombie I'd incapacitated. His face was flushed with excitement, his eyes bright with discovery. I shyly closed the door to his apartment, softly saying, "See you tomorrow." But moments later, someone knocked. It was Kieran holding a bottle of red wine. "I wanted to celebrate," he said, "and thank you properly. You've been risking your life for my research." I knew I shouldn't let him into my apartment, too many variables, too much risk of exposure, but worried I'd miss this opportunity. So I let him in. After I turned off the lights, set up the projector, and started a movie, Kieran had already poured 2 glasses of wine. I nestled in his arms on the couch, smugly taking a sip. Something was wrong. There were drugs in this wine, not strong something to induce drowsiness, maybe cause mild confusion. My heart sank. Had Kieran figured out I wasn't human? Though drugs didn't affect me much, if I drank and didn't get drugged, wouldn't that further expose me? If I pretended to be drugged, wouldn't I have to let Kieran search my apartment? I sipped the wine slowly, mind racing, then suddenly had an idea. I gently turned in his arms, bringing my face close to his neck. "Are you feeling okay?" he asked softly. "Dizzy," I murmured, but in a good way. I bit his neck carefully, injecting venom while drinking just enough to satisfy my hunger. "Try to trap me, will you? I'll make you regret it." Soon, Kieran passed out from his own drugs combined with my venom, the dosages synergizing in unexpected ways. I didn't want to drink heavily drugged blood, so I let him sleep on the couch and rushed to his 18th floor apartment. I practically turned his place upside down but found no evidence he suspected my true identity. Medical journals, research notes, zombie observations, nothing about vampires. So why had he tried to drug me? I was completely baffled and went home frustrated. When Kieran woke the next morning, I pretended to pout about him being a lightweight drinker who'd passed out on my couch. His eyes were dark and unreadable as he looked at me in silence. "I'm sorry," he finally said. "I don't usually drink. I should have known better." From that day on, Kieran acted completely normal, showing no signs of suspicion, as if that wine had been drugged at the factory. I was too lazy to investigate further. I'd just wait and see, though I was extra careful around all 4 of them. 4 down, finally complete. Chapter 6, The Unraveling. I settled into a routine of rotating between 4 meals each week, careful to space out feedings so none of them got too weak. This comfortable lifestyle was absolutely addictive, each man offering something different. Ashton's wholesomeness, Camden's sweetness, Sterling's intensity, Kieran's brilliance. But I should have known it couldn't last. One day, Sterling and I returned from a supply run, and he wanted to see me home. I usually didn't let them into my apartment, worried they'd show up at the same time and discover each other. So I'd always claimed I valued my privacy, only occasionally letting them in briefly to avoid arousing suspicion. Sterling knew my habits and principles. But now he deeply kissed me at the door and still wouldn't leave. He held me in his arms, his scent surrounding me clean sweat and determination. "Let me come in for just a bit, okay? Just a little while." Dizzy with hunger and desire, I mumbled my agreement. But the moment I opened the door, I realized with horror someone else was inside. Before I could react, something struck the back of my head. As my eyes closed, the last thing I saw was Sterling's cold, apologetic face. "I'm sorry," he whispered, "but we need answers." When I came to, I was tied securely to a chair facing 4 men. They all wore expressions darker than storm clouds. "Who exactly are you?" Kieran broke the silence first, his voice clinical and sharp. How should I answer? How had they discovered each other and conspired together? Were they angry about my player ways, or had they figured out I was a vampire? My mind raced with questions, though given the current situation, I didn't have the right to ask them. A beautiful woman. I finally managed, using non-answers to force them to reveal more. Camden rolled his eyes and flopped onto the couch. The other three men's faces darkened further. Be serious, or we'll throw you out to the zombies. Sterling adopted his interrogation stance, though I could see reluctance in his eyes. The People's Police turning on their benefactor, we survived life and death situations together. My eyes immediately reddened with real tears. The head injury had actually hurt. Sterling's face flushed as he choked on his words, unable to continue. You're not afraid of zombies at all, are you? Kieran stepped forward, taking over. Because zombies won't attack you. 2 weeks before the outbreak, you were already selecting people to live here when there was barely any news online. How were you so certain? Why did you choose the 4 of us specifically? What's your connection to the zombie virus? Who sent you? What's your mission? I'm a doctor. I have plenty of ways to make you talk. He expertly toyed with a surgical scalpel as if ready to dissect me. His genius mind had seen straight to the heart of things, every statement cutting to the core. Though his materialist nature apparently hadn't led him to consider vampires, I suspected he thought I was some kind of bioweapon agent or corporate spy. Zombies really don't attack me. The moment the words left my mouth, all 4 stared at me wide-eyed. Wait, let me explain. 2 weeks before the outbreak, zombies had appeared in Western Europe. My cousin lives there. He's in agricultural disease research. He warned me something was spreading. So I believed him completely and prepared. I gestured to Ashton, who looked torn between anger and concern. I didn't know zombies wouldn't attack me until after the outbreak. I discovered it by chance in the parking garage. As for why they're not interested in me, I genuinely don't know. Maybe my blood chemistry, some immune response? I didn't dare tell you because in the apocalypse, this is an advantage but also makes me vulnerable. What if someone tried to capture me, experiment on me? I'm just a trust fund kid whose life philosophy is enjoying the moment. Rather than just surviving until death, I'd rather have fun during the apocalypse, and surviving while having fun is best. I chose you because you're attractive and have skills that complement mine. I wanted people I could stand being around long-term who could help us all survive. Dr. Ashford, I've confessed everything. I blinked obediently, deploying 2 centuries of acting skill. So you hoarded supplies and boyfriends during the apocalypse? Camden exclaimed, looking at me with something like reverence. So you've been deceiving us all along, playing all 4 of us. Ashton's voice cracked with hurt. I'm not playing anyone. My heart broke into many pieces, and each piece fell for someone different. I gazed at each of them in turn. Camden looked at me like he'd found his soulmate, practically ready to untie me though. Kieran's sharp glare stopped him. Ashton seemed frozen, processing this impossible logic. Sterling's expression was incredibly complex, angry, confused, but also somehow not entirely displeased. Like he was running calculations about whether being one of 4 was better than being alone. As for Kieran, the mastermind behind my capture, he twitched his lips coldly. Nice try, but that doesn't explain the blood bags in your refrigerator. He paused for maximum impact. You just happen to be immune to zombies and happen to share their taste for human blood? Fuck, how was this guy so smart? I nearly broke into a cold sweat, but I kept my voice steady. I was afraid someone might get injured and need transfusions but couldn't get to a hospital, so I stocked up in advance. Dr. Ashford, that's actually why I chose you. Though initially I didn't know anyone's blood types, and couldn't exactly ask without seeming strange, so I got a variety of types. Crisis really does unlock potential. I almost wanted to applaud my own quick thinking. At these words, Kieran looked like he'd choked on something, then fell silent with a cold expression. The other 3 men's faces grew even more complicated. Sterling looked like he was reassessing everything. Ashton seemed caught between feeling manipulated and feeling chosen. Camden just seemed impressed by the whole operation. My brain practically short-circuited. I had no idea what these 4 men were thinking. Though my explanation sounded somewhat absurd, it was logical enough and had no obvious holes. Whether or not they truly believed me, they probably wouldn't keep harassing me for now. So I tentatively probed, could you maybe untie me? This is really uncomfortable, and I'm telling you the truth, you can verify everything I said. Seeing the other 3 didn't object, Camden rushed over and quickly freed me. I rubbed my wrists, watching them carefully. Ashton huffed and walked out, clearly needing space to process. Sterling looked like he wanted to breathe fire, but also like he wanted to ask questions. He left without a word. Kieran remained motionless, studying me like a particularly interesting specimen. "You can draw my blood for research," I said quietly. "As much as you need. Test it, analyze it, whatever helps your zombie research. Maybe my immunity will help everyone." Kieran's expression shifted slightly, suspicion mixed with scientific interest. "Fine," he said after a long pause. After an even longer pause, he left too. A true doctor curiosity overriding anger. While I respected his dedication, I also couldn't help feeling sorry for him. Not only would he have to study vampire blood that would yield no useful results, but he'd also continue having his own blood drunk without knowing it. Camden stayed behind, looking at me with open admiration. "That was amazing. You're like a apocalypse mastermind. Camden, you should probably go too." But please. He left reluctantly, leaving me alone in my apartment, surrounded by evidence of my carefully constructed life. 4 men, 4 meals, and now they all knew about each other. This was going to get complicated. Chapter 7, The Aftermath. The next day, I voluntarily went to Kieran's apartment to donate blood for research. He worked with cold professionalism, efficiently drawing multiple vials, labeling them precisely. "This is fascinating," he murmured, holding one vial up to the light. "The color is slightly different, and it's not coagulating normally. Is that bad? It's unusual. I'll need to run more tests." He kept his gaze firmly on the blood, not meeting my eyes. The Antarctica glacier expression made me even more excited. "I just love that look of times you can't stand me but can't get rid of me asterisk." Though Camden's worship gratified me and Kieran's cold professionalism satisfied my twisted sense of humor, the other 2 men gave me serious headaches. Ashton and Sterling were refusing to talk to me. I knocked on Ashton's door with fresh vegetables I'd found, but he wouldn't even open it. Through the door, he said, "I don't need anything. How much do I owe you for rent and food? I'll transfer the money." I silently admired his integrity while desperately wanting to tell him, asterisk, "You don't need food, but I do. Could I maybe just have a little blood?" Asterisk. Sterling did open his door but immediately asked, "Did anything happen between you and the others after that night, after you were tied up?" I really wanted to lie and say no, but knowing Kieran wouldn't back up that story, I had to tell the truth. I watched Sterling's face darken as he started to close the door. "Wait," I put my hand against the door. "Sterling, I never lied about how I feel about you. Each of you is different, special. I don't expect you to understand, but it's true." "How can it be true if you're saying the same thing to 4 different people?" His voice was bitter. "Because you are all different. What I feel for each of you is different. It's not less real just because it's not exclusive." He stared at me for a long moment, then shut the door, leaving me alone in the hallway. So apparently, he really had developed feelings. He wanted to be my one and only. That wouldn't work. It's like eating the same meal every day, even the best food gets boring. After recovering from the rejection, I messaged him, asterisk, "While my heart has many pieces, the biggest piece has always been reserved for you, asterisk." I sighed. I'd sent the message, but who knew if it would work? 2 days passed with no response from Sterling or Ashton. Camden kept visiting, seemingly unbothered by the whole situation. Kieran continued his cold professional routine. Frustrated and increasingly hungry, I decided to go out. Maybe I'd get lucky and find new food sources. If not, I'd raid the hospital blood bank again. I packed the gun and ammunition we'd taken from those thugs and drove out into the empty streets. I cruised around for 2 hours without smelling a single living human. Thinking my suburban villa might be better for defense and storage long-term, I decided to check out the villa district. Maybe there were still people there. I quickly discovered I wasn't the only one with that idea. The villa district was already in ruins, more devastated than downtown. Clearly, it had been heavily looted during the initial outbreak, the wealthy targeted first. The villas now either remained impenetrable fortresses, I could smell people but couldn't reach them through reinforced doors, or stood completely empty. As for my villa, it had been breached and changed hands several times. I'd stopped monitoring it via camera weeks ago. Just thinking about my supplies benefiting someone else made my heart ache. Having found nothing, I decided to head to the hospital for blood bags. But as I drove past my villa, I caught the scent of a healthy human. The scent was faint, seemed like only one person. I parked at a distance, grabbed my gun, and got out cautiously. The iron gate was wrapped in chains with a new lock, not my original setup. I couldn't open it from the front. So I went around to the other side of the property wall where many overgrown plants concealed a hidden door I'd specifically designed for emergencies. Below the door was a tunnel leading inside the villa, ending at a rotating wall panel in the study. The plants here remained intact, apparently no one had found this entrance. I successfully entered, passed through the tunnel, and input the code on the inner door, rotating the entire wall section with a soft mechanical hum. When I emerged from behind the wall, a man stood there pointing a gun at me in shock. An attractive man, though older, maybe 40, mature, which could be interesting. His clothes looked expensive and refined, though now damaged and blood-stained. Italian suit, quality watch, the bearing of someone used to authority. He quickly shifted from shock to wariness and cold calculation. Who are you? I innocently raised my hands in surrender. This is my house. Who are you? His laugh was harsh. How do you prove that? Even if it is yours, it's mine now. Possession is 9/10 of the law, and in case you haven't noticed, there are no laws anymore. How unreasonable. Though honestly, unreasonable people probably survived this long. He'd clearly killed before I could see it in his eyes, smell old blood on him. I just wanted to get some supplies, but looks like I can't. How about you pretend you never saw me and I'll leave now? I started backing toward the wall. Stop. He raised his gun and stepped forward, grabbing my arm with his other hand. His grip was strong, controlled. Where are the supplies? I obediently led him to the basement entrance. The entrance was well hidden behind a bookshelf and had remained undiscovered. When he opened the door and saw the supplies inside, cases of water, preserved food, medical equipment, his eyes lit up with desperate hunger. But then he looked at me with deep suspicion. You hoarded all this, but you're only coming now. This place is too conspicuous. I don't live here. When supplies ran low in my apartment, stores seemed too risky, so I figured I'd just get stuff from here. His eyes showed predatory calculation. You came alone? You live alone? Yes. So capable. He narrowed his eyes, clearly not believing a young woman could survive alone this long, let alone dare to venture out solo with a gun. Really? Look, no one else has come looking for me all this time. Where'd you get the gun? Found it. I deployed 2 centuries worth of acting skills, my expression perfectly sincere. Griffin Hale. He actually lowered his gun slightly and extended his hand in what seemed like a friendly gesture. Sorry about earlier. Apocalypse manners, you know. The traces of unfamiliar blood I could smell on his palm instantly ignited my appetite. Griffin started talking about how a CEO like him had fallen to such depths, how he'd fought criminals with his subordinates and barely escaped, only to be betrayed by those same subordinates who'd left him for dead. How he'd struggled to survive but could no longer contact his wife and daughter. I watched his eyes redden with what looked like genuine emotion, knowing this was a trap, his carefully edited story designed to gain sympathy. I played along with a sympathetic expression, reciprocating with my own fabricated experiences, crafting a naive, helpful persona. Since you want to play games, I'll play along. It's not very safe here, even with the supplies, Griffin said. If it's convenient, could I come with you? We'd be safer searching for supplies together and I could help protect you. If the zombie crisis ends, I'll pay you very well. I have significant assets. His words were fervent and seemingly sincere. Instinct told me this was a dangerous man, the type who'd eliminate loose ends, who might not hesitate to shoot me once he'd secured a better location. But he'd awakened my vampire's bloodlust with his deception. The challenge excited me, so I agreed. He and I loaded supplies from the basement into my car, maintaining friendly conversation the entire time. Back at my building, I settled him into the 10th floor of the apartment whose key I'd taken from my former zombie neighbor. As I turned to leave, I was knocked unconscious for the second time in a week. Apparently, I needed to work on my paranoia. When I came to, both hands were tied to the bedposts. Griffin stood at the foot of the bed looking down at me, lips curved in a satisfied smirk. Little girl, didn't anyone teach you not to trust strange men during an apocalypse? What was with this guy? Couldn't he have played the game a bit longer? I'd been looking forward to a more interesting seduction. What are you doing, you ungrateful backstabber? I saved you out of kindness. Nothing much. I just prefer being in control. Tell me your apartment passcode and I promise to let you live. I obediently gave him the code to my 17th floor apartment, but he didn't release me. Instead, he stepped closer, eyes traveling over my body. What are you doing? I already told you the password. You can let me go now, right? He smiled darkly, roughly grabbing at my clothes. I struggled and begged loudly, putting on quite a show. But internally I sneered. I'm pretty hungry too. I hadn't completely drained someone in 50 years. When Griffin's face got close to mine, fumbling with my clothes, I struck. I bit into his neck, injecting only enough venom to paralyze him while keeping him conscious. I wanted him to understand what was happening. I drank deeply, savoring the taste of fear mixed with blood. He grew increasingly terrified, making muffled pleading sounds around the paralysis, his eyes wide with horror as he finally understood he was prey, not predator. After a long while, I stopped, my blood-covered mouth stretching into a mocking grin as I watched him process his fate. "You picked the wrong victim," I whispered. Expecting him to untie me was unrealistic. He'd lost too much blood and was paralyzed by terror and venom. I was trying to figure out how to free my hands when I heard sounds outside the door. "Open up, it's me," Dorian's voice. Though my current state was embarrassing, being seen by a fellow vampire was infinitely better than being seen by humans. "I'm tied up, can't open the door, figure something out." Tch, a disgusted sigh came from outside. I listened to Dorian picking the lock with practiced ease, wondering why he'd come looking for me. Click, the lock opened. I wiped the blood from my mouth onto Griffin's clothes, trying to look somewhat presentable. Dorian walked in and met my embarrassed, ingratiating smile. "Hey, handsome, help me out, untie these ropes." He looked me over in my disheveled state and laughed. Well, did the player finally crash and burn? Pretty much. Ran into someone less refined than me. How are you going to thank me? He efficiently untied the ropes, his cool fingers brushing my wrists. "Buy you dinner, though I already ate half." I straightened my clothes and gestured to the unconscious Griffin. Though speechless, Dorian didn't refuse. He was quite particular. He moved Griffin to the table with vampire strength, cut his wrist with a knife, and collected blood in a wine glass. Very elegant, very refined. "Why'd you come looking for me?" I asked, settling into a chair. "Living humans are getting scarce. Wanted to check on an old friend, make sure you weren't starving." He raised his glass and took a delicate sip. "Though your life seems pretty good, 4 lively ones upstairs, plus you can afford to feast this extravagantly downstairs." "Don't tease me. A few days ago, those 4 upstairs tied me up. They're suspecting me of bioterrorism or something. What great-kept men they turned out to be." Dorian burst out laughing, the sound genuinely amused. "I heard from the Vampire Network that the zombie situation might resolve soon," he said after his laughter subsided. "Maybe in a month the world returns to normal. What are your plans?" "Oh, I hadn't heard. Plans? Same as before, I guess. Move to a new city, start over." "I thought this experience might have changed your perspective somewhat." His tone was careful. "Changed what?" "Maybe. A stable romantic relationship?" Dorian looked directly into my eyes, his ancient gaze somehow vulnerable. "With who?" I met his stare calmly. "With me, or—" he paused. "With one of them, that doctor, perhaps." "I'm not interested in stability, nothing's changed." "Not even after all this? After collecting 4 men, after feeding on them, after they discovered you and you had to face consequences?" "Especially not after all this. It proved my point, exclusive relationships are traps. Better to keep things light, keep moving." "Would you fall in love with him, the doctor?" His voice was quiet. "Or have you already? Have you ever fallen for your prey?" "No," he paused, "except you. But I'm not you. I won't fall for my prey. Even if I did fall for someone, that doesn't mean I'd make the blood oath with them. The price of becoming vampire lovers is too high, bound together for centuries, potentially forever. I can't guarantee I won't change my mind, won't want freedom again." "That's fine then. I can wait." He smiled, apparently ready to drop the subject, though something sad lingered in his expression. Dorian was strange. On one hand, he was like me, a love them and leave them type, who'd lived centuries without attachment. On the other hand, he seemed to want a monogamous relationship bound by the blood oath's strict magical contract. He'd periodically test the waters with me, then act casual after rejection, impossible to read. I didn't understand if this was peak player behavior or peak devotion. He stood up to leave, thoughtfully knocking on the bedroom door where Griffin lay before walking out. "Take care of yourself," he said at the door, "and think about what you really want." Chapter 8, The Revelation. After Dorian left, I dealt with Griffin, left him alive but weak in the 10th floor apartment with enough supplies to recover. A warning to others perhaps, or maybe just mercy I couldn't explain. I returned to my own apartment and collapsed on the couch, emotionally exhausted. My security feed showed all 4 men in their respective apartments. Ashton was tending to plants on his balcony with methodical care. Camden was watching something on his laptop, occasionally laughing. Sterling was doing push-ups, working through his feelings physically. Kieran was at his desk, surrounded by notes and blood samples, obsessively working. 4 men, 4 different ways of processing the revelation of my deception. A message pinged on my phone. "Kieran, *, can you come to my apartment? I have questions about the blood samples, *. I headed to the 18th floor, curious what he'd discovered. When he let me in, his apartment smelled like coffee and disinfectant. His desk was covered in notes, diagrams, microscope slides. "Your blood is remarkable," he said without preamble. "It has properties I've never seen before. Enhanced regeneration, unusual antibodies, cellular structures that defy normal human biology." My heart raced. Had he figured it out? "What are you saying?" "I'm saying you're not entirely human, or you've been exposed to something that fundamentally altered your biology." He turned to face me fully, and I think you know that. I could lie. I could deflect. I could inject venom and make him forget. But looking at his brilliant, intense face, at the weeks of research he'd conducted, at the care he'd taken even while angry with me, I made a choice. "You're right." His expression didn't change. "Vampire?" I actually laughed. "How did you—" "Process of elimination. The zombie immunity, the blood bags, your speed that night at the supermarket, the way you bit that man to paralyze him. Plus mythology." He gestured to a stack of books on his desk. "I've been researching. Vampires are the only explanation that fits all the data." "Are you going to tell the others?" "That depends. Have you been feeding on us?" I could lie, but what was the point now? "Yes." "Does it harm us?" "Not permanently. I take small amounts. Use venom that causes temporary confusion and drowsiness. You heal quickly." I paused. "I'm sorry. I should have asked permission." "You should have." His voice was hard. "That's a violation. You drugged us and fed on us without consent." "I know. Why me? Why any of us?" "Initially, because you're attractive and intelligent and I was starving. But then," I trailed off. "But then?" "Then you became more than meals. You became people I cared about in different ways, which made everything more complicated." He turned back to his notes, processing. "The others, do they suspect?" "No, they think I'm weird, possibly connected to the zombie outbreak, but not a vampire." "Are you going to kill me now, to keep your secret?" I laughed bitterly. "No, I don't kill to keep secrets. I'd just make you forget." "You can do that?" "My venom in higher doses causes amnesia, selective memory erasure." "But you're not going to do that either." He turned to study me. "Are you?" "I don't know, I should. It's the smart play. I met his eyes, but I don't want to." "Why not?" "Because I'm tired of lying to you, and because... Because you'd make an excellent vampire." The words hung in the air between us. Kieran stared at me, processing this new information. "Is that an offer?" "It's an observation. Vampirism requires a blood oath, a permanent bond between maker and progeny. It's not something I've ever offered anyone." "But you're considering it." "I'm saying you'd be well suited to it. Unlimited time to study medicine to help people across centuries, enhanced abilities, virtual immortality. At the cost of drinking blood and avoiding sunlight." "Yes." "And this bond, what does it entail?" "Complete connection between maker and progeny, shared emotions, location awareness, the ability to compel obedience. It's why vampires are so cautious about creating others." "Sounds like slavery." "It can be, or partnership depending on the relationship." I paused. "Dorian suggested it. He said you'd make a good vampire." "Dorian, the vampire at the hospital." "Yes." "Is he your maker?" "No, we're equals. We just knew each other before." Kieran turned back to his microscope, his mind clearly racing through possibilities. "I need to think about this." "Of course. But I won't tell the others, yet. That's your choice to make." "Thank you." As I left, he called out, "The feeding, if you need it, I'm willing, but ask first." I turned back, shocked. "You're giving permission?" "I'm giving informed consent. There's a difference." His eyes met mine. "I understand what you are now. I understand the need. I'd rather you feed safely than attack strangers or starve." "Even after everything?" "Especially after everything. You saved my life at the hospital. You've helped my research. You've been honest when you could have lied." He paused. "And I'm curious what it feels like." I felt something shift in my chest, something warm and uncomfortable. "Okay, thank you." That night, I fed on Kieran for the first time with his full awareness and consent. It was different, better, and worse. Better because there was no deception, no guilt. Worse because his eyes stayed open, watching me, and I felt exposed in a way I hadn't in 2 centuries. When I pulled away, he touched the bite marks on his neck thoughtfully. Fascinating. The venom creates a mild euphoric effect, and the healing is already starting. "You're analyzing your own vampire bite?" "Of course, it's remarkable data." He smiled slightly. "Same time next week?" I laughed despite myself. Same time next week. Chapter 9. The Crisis. Things settled into a new normal over the next week. I continued feeding on all 4 men, though only Kieran knew the truth. With him, I could be honest. With the others, I maintained the comfortable fiction. Ashton slowly started talking to me again, though with more guardedness. We gardened together, and I let him teach me about composting. Sterling remained distant but professional. When I suggested another supply run, he agreed, and we worked together efficiently if coldly. Camden seemed completely unbothered by the whole situation, still flirtatious and cheerful. His resilience was almost admirable. The zombie situation was improving, fewer zombies on the streets, military presence increasing. Rescue seemed imminent. I should have been pleased. Instead, I felt oddly melancholy. What would happen when this ended, when they could leave? One evening, returning from the hospital with Kieran, we encountered a scene that changed everything. A woman burst out of a residential complex at full sprint. 4 grotesquely twisted zombies chased her, gaining fast. Maybe infected by Kieran's passion for helping, I almost instinctively floored the accelerator, trying to circle around and hit the zombies. Unfortunately, I was a second too late. As I struck 2 zombies, the lead zombie bit into the woman's shoulder. Kieran's gunshot and the zombie hitting the ground sounded simultaneously. I grabbed the knife I always carried and leaped from the car, yelling at Kieran to stay inside. After finishing off the struggling zombies, I ran to the woman. The bite was too close to her brain and heart. She was transforming at an alarming rate, her skin already graying. Save me, my child." Her speech was already slurred, eyes turning gray-white. "Where?" I gripped her shoulders. "Where is your child?" "Inside, apartment, 3B, please." Her body convulsed, the transformation accelerating. I held her as she died, feeling helpless and horrified. Even as a vampire, watching a living person become a walking corpse right in your arms, it was overwhelming. Child, she still had a child. I suddenly snapped back to reality, dropped the poor mother, and ran into the complex. "Where are you going?" Kieran shouted from the car. Another gunshot rang out. I glanced back to see the woman, who'd started to rise as a zombie, collapse again in the sunset's fading light. I was momentarily stunned by Kieran's decisive ruthlessness, and by my own hesitation and compassion. I turned and continued into the complex, following the faint scent of living human. Though the air was thick with zombie stench, there was definitely a child's scent, young, terrified. A door on the 3rd floor wobbled slightly, though there was no wind. I rushed over and saw a small, urgent body behind it, desperately pushing to close a gap where zombies clawed. "Mama, mama!" The little boy's voice grew increasingly tearful. I yanked the door open, pulled him into my arms, and ran toward the car. Kieran had reliably followed in the vehicle and was now nearby. The area seemed empty, but my supernatural senses warned me danger. Suddenly, a figure dropped from above. I barely dodged, twisting to protect the child. The zombie's claws grazed my shoulder instead of the boy. Kieran's gun fired. The zombie fell. I barely made it to the car, the boy wailing in my arms. Kieran started speeding away as the zombie horde behind us grew larger, though thankfully they were falling farther behind. I exhaled in relief, about to comfort the child when I noticed blood on my face. Not my blood, the boy's blood. I looked down in horror at the barely visible scratch on his small palm, already giving off a faint corpse smell. He'd been scratched by that falling zombie. I made a decision almost without thinking. I started sucking blood from the wound, fighting every instinct as a vampire. Zombie blood was toxic to vampires. Even trace amounts caused violent illness. But this was a child, an innocent child whose mother had just died, begging me to save him. "What are you doing?" Kieran shouted in horror. The boy cried harder, trying to pull his arm away, but I held it firmly. I sucked and spat, trying to get the contaminated blood out before the infection spread, fighting nausea and revulsion. I didn't know how much blood I'd drawn. When the boy's crying weakened, I finally stopped. If I continued, he'd die from blood loss even if he didn't turn. We raced home at maximum speed. The moment we arrived, I rushed to the bathroom and vomited violently. Humans vomit food and bile. I vomited blood, all the blood I'd consumed over the past week, plus my own vampire blood. It was excruciating, toxic, burning through me. Kieran watched me expel blood with horror. "What's wrong? What's happening?" He practically crawled to get his medical kit, trying to help, but nothing worked on vampire physiology. I waved him off weakly, trying to tell him to stop wasting his effort, but he kept frantically administering aid. When I finally had no more blood to vomit, I sat weakly on the floor amid the carnage, looking like a crime scene. So hungry and exhausted, I passed out. I woke in Kieran's bed. The child lay beside me, alive, breathing normally, receiving a blood transfusion. Kieran sat in a chair, pale and hollow-eyed, looking lost. Well, normal humans don't usually witness such scenes. Noticing I was awake, he brought over a bowl of very plain chicken soup. I pushed away his hand and stood up, needing blood desperately. I need to go home. No, you're too weak, you can't leave. His voice was firm. I really need to go home, don't worry about me. You're not well, I'm a doctor, drink the soup first. Ugh, this sudden concern was touching but unhelpful. I was starving, weak, and he smelled delicious. I grabbed Kieran's arm that wasn't holding soup and bit down, injecting no venom this time. I felt him tremble, felt the soup bowl fall and splash hot liquid down his leg, but he didn't pull away. He let me drink, understanding what I needed. When I finally pulled away, sated enough to think clearly, I met his eyes. Thank you. The boy, he said quietly, you saved him, even though it nearly killed you. His mother begged me to. You drank zombie-contaminated blood to save a stranger's child. His voice held something like wonder. You're not the predator you pretend to be. I didn't know what to say to that. The boy woke up a few hours later, confused and traumatized but alive, no signs of zombie infection. I'd gotten the contaminated blood out in time. Kieran made arrangements to find the child's relatives, using his hospital connections to navigate the emerging relief systems. After the boy was settled and sleeping again, Kieran found me on his couch, staring at nothing. I've been thinking about your offer, he said quietly. What offer? Vampirism. I looked up, startled. I want to do it. Kieran, you don't have to. I want unlimited time to study medicine and help countless people across that unlimited time. I want to understand diseases, develop treatments, save lives for centuries instead of decades. There are plenty of evil people in the world. As a doctor, I have to save them, but as a vampire, I can feed on them without guilt. His face was completely serious. Patient blood usually tastes terrible, I warned. That's fine, as long as it sustains me. I looked at Kieran bathed in warm yellow light in his white shirt, suddenly feeling like I'd been given an impossible gift. Are you sure this is permanent, forever? I'm sure. The bond between us will be unbreakable. You'll be connected to me for eternity. I understand. You might hate me eventually. Centuries is a long time. Then we'll figure it out together. He smiled slightly. Besides, you're not as terrible as you think you are. That performance with the child proved it. I moved close to his neck, inhaled deeply, then gently bit down. This time was different. This time I injected ancient venom from deep within my vampire nature, the venom that transforms rather than simply paralyzes. The venom that creates an eternal bond. I drank deeply while releasing the transformative compound into his bloodstream, feeling the magical connection form between us, awareness of his location, his emotions, his life force linking to mine. The blood oath sealed in blood and venom. Kieran gasped, his body convulsing as the transformation began. It would take 3 days for the change to complete. 3 days of fever, pain, cellular restructuring. I held him through it all, feeling his suffering through our new bond, unable to ease it but refusing to leave him alone. On the 3rd day, Kieran opened his eyes, now slightly more reflective, slightly more predatory. I can hear your heartbeat, he said wonderingly, and feel your presence, like you're part of me now. That's the bond, it goes both ways. He sat up slowly, testing his new body. Everything is sharper, clearer. How do you manage all this sensory input? You get used to it, takes about a week. He looked at his hands, at the way they moved with inhuman grace now. This is extraordinary. Welcome to immortality, Dr. Ashford. He met my eyes and something passed between us, understanding, connection, partnership. What happens now? Now we figure out what we are to each other, maker and progeny, partners, maybe something more. And the others? That's up to you. They're your secret to tell or keep. He considered this. I think I'll keep it for now. They've had enough shocks. I laughed. Agreed. Chapter 10, The Choice. 6 months later, the zombie crisis officially ended. The world gradually returned to normal. Infrastructure rebuilt, government stabilized, life resumed its familiar patterns. My 4 men, now including 1 vampire, had become a strange family. Ashton still didn't know the truth, but had forgiven my deception. He'd started a rooftop garden that supplied food for everyone in the building. His wholesomeness remained unchanged. Camden had moved on to flirting with a survivor he'd met during a supply run, though he still visited occasionally. We'd reached a comfortable friends with benefits arrangement. Sterling had been recruited back into the police force, now working on post-apocalypse security. He and I had reached an understanding. He knew I cared for him, even if not exclusively, and he'd decided that was enough. And Kieran was my partner now, my progeny, my equal. We'd established a comfortable relationship hunting together, studying medicine together, existing in that liminal space between romantic and professional. Dorian stopped by occasionally, always watching Kieran and me with that unreadable expression. But now it was time for me to go. The world was rebuilding, and I needed to rebuild my life in a new city. Stay too long in one place, and people notice you don't age. I packed a simple bag, including some of Kieran's research notes and a few small mementos from each of the men. Kieran took me to the airport. "You could stay," he said quietly. "You know I can't. I've been here too long already." "I could come with you. We're bonded. I'm supposed to stay close to my maker." "You're supposed to, but you don't have to. You have work here, people who need you, and you're strong enough to manage the bond at a distance." "When will I see you again?" "Whenever you want. You can feel where I am. Just follow the bond." He smiled sadly. "That's not the same as asking me to come. I'm a wandering vampire, Kieran. It's what I do, what I've always done." "But you don't have to be. You could choose to stay." I looked at him, brilliant, eternal, mine in a way no one else had ever been. "If you want, I'd be willing to become your vampire partner," he said quietly. "A true partner, not just maker and progeny." "Why two?" "But I only want to be a wandering vampire." "That works too," he smiled helplessly. "I'll wait, however long it takes." "You might be waiting forever." "That's fine, we have forever." I reached up to touch his face, this man I'd transformed, this connection I'd never expected. "See you around, Dr. Ashford." "See you around." I turned toward my gate, toward my next journey, feeling the bond stretch between us like a golden thread. For 200 years, I'd been alone. Maybe I didn't have to be anymore. But I wasn't ready to admit that yet. So I walked forward into my next life, carrying all of them with me. The end.